Okay,
Started.
we are started. Well, hello everybody. We've got a pretty good number of participants. Thank you. And this is a first, as it says, the very first ever AIAA Los Angeles, Las Vegas online talent show. And I'm Dan Raymer, and I'm sitting here in my office near the Los Angeles airport. And I'm living proof that be very careful what you suggest to somebody like Ken from the AIAA, because just in passing, we were talking about something completely unrelated. And we were talking about COVID-19 like everybody else is talking. And I said something along the lines of, you know, AIAA, we should do something, you know, just for everybody who's locked at home. We should do something like a talent show. Oh boy, didn't take Ken too long to turn that off the wall suggestion into, Dan, you're gonna organize a talent show. So here we are with a talent show organized. This is the first ever. Forgive us if some of the engineering goes poorly, and I mean the recording engineering and the aeronautical engineering we can handle, but recording engineering and getting all this stuff to work might be a trick. But I think it'll go pretty well. We've done a couple of tests. I think it's going to go pretty good. Now, being an engineer, I can't possibly start something like this without some view graphs. That's how we engineers do things. So here we are, AIAA Los Angeles online talent show. And of course, that's me on the left in a rather old picture. My wife just complained about how old the picture is, but it's, to my recollection, the last time I played in front of a fairly large audience. That was about 100 people, maybe 200 in Tunisia. It's kind of a long story. But in any case, that was fun, and that's the picture I could find of me playing in front of quite a few people. So I'm going to play in front of you as well shortly, and hope that goes well. And I did want to tell you that we do have a special guest star, Olivia Rocks, who's a real, no kidding, recording star. She has an album out. She was on American Idol Top 10, which means that instead of singing in front of a couple hundred people like myself, she has literally sung in front of 10 million people. That's how many they drew. So she's pretty good. So we'll bring her in towards the end of the show here, and she's got a couple of songs that she's going to do. One off her new album, and another one that she just wrote recently, and is kind enough to preview that for us. Both of them are somewhat aerospace themed, so I'll explain why later. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, here is the show that we have as of now, and I won't go through all of it, but it's a pretty good show, and there's a pretty good mix-up of talents and abilities. We've got singers, we've got people playing instruments, we have artists that are going to show their stuff, we have some photography. Max is going to show CAD modeling, which I think is going to be quite interesting. We've got some singers and lots of things that I think should be pretty good. So like I said, we do have Olivia Rocks also, and she just did a mic check for us a little while ago. And she's very casual. It's going to be very much an acoustic set, so it should be very nice. She's going to do 2 songs for us. Here's a funny thing. We're going to vote on the acts, and you might have seen in the announcements for this show that I have donated 3 copies of my aircraft design textbook and 1 copy of my autobiography, Living in the Future, as prizes. So the 3 best acts, based on your votes, get the textbook, the Aircraft Design and Conceptual Approach. And the very worst act, as voted by you guys, gets a copy of my autobiography. Well, okay, here's how you vote. Events, there it is, by midnight on Monday. So those of you that are on computers that want to vote, take a quick screenshot to get that, or you could contact one of us later. The voting is confidential, and we're not going to tell who got the bad prize. It's not a bad prize. Who got stuck with the autobiography. We'll just send them a book. They'll know, but we're not going to announce and embarrass them. And it's all in good fun. I hope they realize. I haven't quite decided how we figure out who is the worst act. Probably whoever gets the fewest number of votes for best act. Although if anybody wants to throw in, these guys were really terrible, that's okay too. And it'll be completely confidential, I promise. Let's see, and we'll throw in some audience Q&A at the end of the show if anybody wishes. So no Q&A along the way. If you click that button that says raise your hand, we're not going to stop the show and do it. So. Okay, so that is the end of that, and we are now ready to start the show. And as you probably saw, I'm up first, so let's see how this goes. So let me aim this down a bit. I've been messing around trying to figure out how to get these things to work. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to do two songs, both of them are in some way aerospace related, at least slightly. The first one I'll do is a song written by a guy named Stewart. He wrote a bunch of real interesting historical songs. He was kind of a pop star, pop singer, sort of in the 70s and 80s time period. He's still active. He still gives shows, and I still go watch him because I still like the guy. But he wrote a really nice song that's about a woman pilot. And it's just a very interesting song for those of us that love airplanes. It's got a lot of references to airplane type things. The very first line references the Wright brothers. So you gotta love a song that starts out that way. But Al Stewart is actually from Scotland. And so some of the references are more UK than US oriented. So some of us have no idea what those are. I had to look a couple of them up. So one of the references is Amy Johnson. And she was a very famous woman pilot. Around 1930, she was the first person to fly solo from London to Australia. And that is in a biplane. And so she became quite famous because of that. There's a line in the song about a compass rose, and a lot of people know what that is. Some people don't. The compass rose is that little figure, that little diagram that goes inside a compass, and you also see it stuck on maps. There's 3 airplanes mentioned. You might not know they're airplanes, though. Faith, Hope, and Charity are 3 very famous airplanes if you're from the UK. They were extremely obsolete biplane fighters on the island of Malta. And when World War II started, they were all that stood between the fascist Italian takeover of Malta, and they succeeded. They actually held off the fascists with these 3 obsolete biplanes. And that was such a wonderful story, very famous at the time, that the British Air Force always had 3 airplanes named Faith, Hope, and Charity in the inventory up to very recently. That was kind of a cool thing. Whatever the new airplane was, a Tornado or something, they gave those names to 3 of them. Okay, and then the final one is Flying Circus. Most people know what that is. That's from World War I. So I will give this a try, and we'll see if this works at all. Aim it down because the guitar is prettier than I am. With your photographs of Kitty Hawk and your biplanes on the wall, you were always Amy Johnson from the time that you were small. No schooling kept you grounded, while your thoughts could get away. You were taking off in tiger moths, your wings against the brushstrokes of the day. Are you there? On the tarmac with the winter in your hair. By the antique hangar's door, you stop and stare. In the oil drums behind you, little cat. Oh, are you there? Well, you wrapped me up in a leather coat and you took me for a ride. We were drifting with the tailwind when the runway came in sight. Clouds came up to gather us as the cockpit turned to white. When I looked, the sky was empty. I suppose you never saw the landing lights. Are you there? In your jacket with the grease stain and the tear. Caught up in the slipstream of the air. Compass rose will guide you anywhere. As the night birds sail away, and lights the maps and diagrams that Leonardo made. You can see faith, hope, and charity as they bang above the field. You can join the flying circus, you can catch the morning air against your wheels. Are you there? Do you have a thought for me that you can share? Will you take me unaware? Just call me if you love me, you there. I'll find you there. Oh, I heard someone clapping. I got to play that song at the coolest wedding I ever went to. I knew two aeronautical engineers, wonderful people, and they got married, and they both loved airplanes very much. So they rented a DC-3 down at Long Beach Airport, and they stood in front of the DC-3. And to marry them, they found a woman pastor who had actually been a flight attendant, and they rented her a 1930s period costume for a flight attendant, and they got married right there by the DC-3. And I stood by the tail, and I played that song. And then after I was done, we all jumped in the DC-3 and flew down the coast. That was really cool. Okay, I'm gonna do another one then. And these are the words you hate to hear the most. It's an original song. We all think we're songwriters, so it's an original song. And it's actually about kind of a advanced aerospace science type of a thing. It's actually about robotic warfare. Yeah, who doesn't want to hear a song about that? So anyway, here it is. It's called Flower Stand. It has a happy ending because in the end, the people all die and the flowers come back to life. In the middle of a field, near a laughing silver stream, stood a flower made of captured sound. And it stood throughout the day, not a single thing to say, and it never bothered anyone. Then they built a factory town, and the concrete hit the ground, and the flower couldn't find the sky. The air was painted gray, raindrop couldn't play, and the laughing silver stream went by. Men came there every day, making weapons, steel and gray, and they never got to see the sky. In the thunder and the noise, building deadly grown-up toys, and they weren't allowed to wonder why. Then the lightning filled the air, walls of fire everywhere. With the sounding of his wings came the silent killing things. By the coming of the dawn, all the men were gone. Broken concrete, twisted steel, but a tiny trickle wets the clay. By the misty morning light, rusty litter of the fight, the flower stands to greet the day. Okay.
Nice.
That was fun. What a strange song to start something like this up with. Okay, so let's see. I am trying to get the screen back. Sorry. Hang on a second. Where did it go? There we go. And we next have Charlie Jackson, who is going to play a recorder and tell us all about it. So Charlie, take it away.
Hi, I'll be playing a alto recorder. I haven't figured out how to get the best settings, so you're just going to see a headshot. It's a piece from the 1700s called Paul's Steeple.
Nice. That was cool.
I was applauding with my mute on. That was really nice, Charlie. A very good thing. Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see now. We'll mute Charlie there. And our next performer is Valerie. Valerie Laudensky. And she's going to sing a song called Gravity, Defying Gravity, it actually says, which is very appropriate, although it's probably more about emotions than actual anti-gravity science, but one can hope. Can we get Val switched in there, Ken?
Yeah, I tried to. Oh, she's back.
There she is. Okay, and get her full screen, and we'll get her started. There we are.
Not quite as good at accompaniment, so I'm going to use my cell phone. It worked. It worked-ish.
Yeah,
Is
that's
this all right?
working good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good now.
Right.
So,
Apologies about the lighting. This should have worked. Something has changed within me. Something is not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. Too late for second guessing. Too late to go back to sleep. It's time to trust my instincts. Close my eyes and leap. It's time to try defying gravity. I think I'll try defying gravity, and you can't bring me down. I'm through accepting limits, 'cause someone says they're so. Some things I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. Too long I've been afraid of losing love, I guess I've lost. Well, if that's love, it comes at much too high a cost. I'd sooner buy defying gravity. Kiss me goodbye, I'm defying gravity, and you can't pull me down. Unlimited, my future is unlimited. And I've just had a vision like a prophecy. I know it seems truly crazy and true, the vision's hazy, but I know someday I'll be flying so high, defying gravity. I'm flying high, defying gravity. They'll never bring me down. So if you care to find me, look to the western skies. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves the chance to fly. And if I'm flying so low, at least I'm flying free. To those who ground me, take a message back from me. Tell them how I am defying gravity. I'm flying high, defying gravity, and soon I'll match them in renown. And nobody in all of Oz, no wizard that there is or was, is ever gonna bring me down. Bring So it's kind of about gravity.
Wow.
Wasn't sure when it was
Nice.
over. That's very nice. Very nice. Nice voice.
For those who don't know, that's
Fantastic.
from the musical Wicked. So like Wizard of Oz, Elphaba, actually flying.
Okay. I saw Wicked. That was great. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. So next we are going to Michelle. Let me unmute Michelle there. And I guess there's Michelle. And Michelle is going to present a bunch of photography. And Michelle is actually quite well known as an X15 expert and gives very nice talks. If you ever get a chance, you can see her at various AIAA functions. And I have a special closeness to the X15 because my first boss when I went to work at North American was the guy who actually did the configuration layout of the X15. He once showed me his original layout drawing of that. And I just kicked myself because I could have just taken it right down to the blueprint machine and had a copy, and I didn't. So anyway, Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, just got to share the screen here. And there we go. Okay, I'm going to share with you two aspects of flight. I'm going to share with you the macro aspect of flight that most people are familiar with, specifically rocketry flight, more specific the space shuttle, but a couple of extras. And then we're going to get a little bit into micro flight as well. So I'm just going to share some photos here. The first one is a time exposure of the Delta II on its 202nd mission from Cape Canaveral back in January 8th of 1991. This time exposure was taken from about 10 miles south of Cape Canaveral. It was launching the NATO 4A communication satellite. It's pretty amazing to be able to see these things, and I love it when we're able to capture the time exposures like that. So now I'm going to get into a whole sequence of space shuttle photography. What I'm going to do is basically take you through a mission from preparations through landing, but there's various shuttles from various time periods, so they're not in chronological order, but they're in mission order. Oh, what's going on here? It's not moving now. Hold on just one moment. Pause share. I don't know why this is not going where it's supposed to go. Hold on one second here. It worked a moment ago. There we go. Can you, oh, no. Huh, this is really weird. Something is not working right here. Let me try one other thing here. Sorry about that. It worked in the test, but it didn't work here. Okay.
Isn't that a typical engineering problem?
Of course, of course. Okay, now back to share screen. And there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully this will work in the future here. So this is September 20th of 1998. The Atlantis space shuttle was being rolled out after refurbishment at the Palmdale plant. They installed the first ever glass cockpit in Atlantis. This upgrade eliminated most of the gauges and dials that they used. The photo was actually taken from the roof of the orbiter building where they constructed it. This shows the kind of stupid things that I often do, like hanging out over the side of a building to get a photograph. And no, this is not working for, I don't get why this is not working. I have to do this one at a time. I'm really sorry for that. It's not working the way it's supposed to work. Oh, yeah, I'll try again here. And yeah, I got to share screen each time. That's, I do apologize for that. Where is it here? Okay. So, oh, this did not go where it's supposed to go. Oh.
Don't complain about it, just.
I'm going to try to back this up here. Are we getting the share screen? Dan, are you getting the share screen?
Can he hear you?
Yes, it's going pretty good.
Okay, you are seeing it because it wasn't going here for a while. All right.
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay, let's try that then. So this is the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and this was right after it rolled out, very first day. The Endeavour, of course, was built to replace the Challenger. This is the Columbia Space Shuttle when it arrived. See, it's not going where it's supposed to go. Okay. So the Columbia Space Shuttle arriving to get its glass cockpit installed. This is right after it was taken off the back of the 747, which you can see behind it. This is around spring of 2000. After they installed the glass cockpit, Columbia returned to service and only flew one successful mission before being lost on STS-107 on February 1st of 2003. It was a really terrible loss, as we're all remembering. What? Now this is the Space Shuttle Challenger leaving the ground for the very first time on the back of the 747. This is July 4th of 1982. Earlier that day, the Space Shuttle Columbia had landed after the ending of STS-4. Ronald Reagan was there, the president at the time, and actually gave the go-ahead for the Challenger to take flight, where it then completed 9 successful missions before being lost on 51L in 1986. And now the next several shots here. There we go. This is the Space Shuttle Discovery on rollout to the pad back in 2006 for the start of STS-121. So these were all taken down at the Cape. It's pretty amazing to watch this thing lumbering along. It took 7 hours and 45 minutes for the space shuttle to get to the pad that day. So we followed it from noon up until after sunset. And then on October 17th of 1989, there we go. This is the Space Shuttle Atlantis out on the pad. They just rolled back the service structure and turned on the lights. This is the night before the launch of STS-34, which would deploy the Galileo spacecraft on its way on a 6-year journey to Jupiter, where it explored Jupiter from 1995 through 2003. And one thing I do love about that photograph is I won the Kodak International News Award for that one back in 1990. So I was very proud of that photograph. This is Atlantis about an hour after the photo you saw before, fully at night at this point. The lights on the
I
pad.
really like that last photo.
What's
Last
that?
photo.
Oh,
This one here.
The one before that one. That one's really nice.
Oh, this one here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of my favorite favorite photos. And as I say, that's the one I won the award for, so I'm really happy with that one. Very proud of that one. I should mention at the time that I was taking the photograph you're seeing now of Atlantis, myself and other people who were with me, we were being eaten alive by mosquitoes that night. I actually had mosquitoes landing on my eyes, coming in between my glasses and my face. It was just terrible, but it was worth it in the end to get the photography. Okay, next one. And this is the launch the next morning, October 18th of, excuse me, 1989. This is the entire launch sequence of Atlantis. So you're seeing the moment of ignition through about the first 2.5 minutes of flight after the solid rocket boosters have dropped off. You can see how far away it gets in just a little over 2 minutes. It's, I hope that everybody gets to see launches at some point. I know the shuttle's no longer with us, but it was something to see. The sound rolling across, or the first 15 seconds of flight from the press site, from where you saw the countdown clock, is actually in total silence because the sound takes that long to reach you. And then once it gets there, it's just pounding you in the chest. It's just absolutely amazing. So now we're coming in for a landing. This is Space Shuttle Columbia on April 14th of 1981. This is the very first landing of the space shuttle after an orbital mission. You see the T-38 that was flying chase for it that day. And let's see here. That's about a minute before the landing is when that photograph was taken from the lake bed. And here we are just moments before touchdown. This is Columbia on STS-58 on November 1st of 1993. John Blaha and Rick Searfoss are up in the cockpit flying the vehicle just feet away from touchdown. And this is also Columbia, STS-8, just inches above touchdown now, the very first night landing coming in at Edwards Air Force Base. So, and then we actually have touchdown itself. This is Discovery at the end of STS-31. Discovery had just delivered the Hubble Space Telescope to orbit on this mission. So this was definitely a historic time. Unfortunately, at the time they were landing, we didn't yet know that Hubble's eyesight was pretty screwed up at that time. So we still had a few years to go before we got those amazing pictures that we're used to now. Now, I've been trying for several missions to get a landing in Florida, but every time I went to Florida for a mission, the landings always took place back at California. So I finally did get a landing at the Cape, which was really nice to see it. This is Atlantis touching down at the end of STS-71 in 1995. And here's the won't stop again. They're towing the Enterprise back after the very first flight of the Space Shuttle. This is the first ever free flight of the Space Shuttle on August 12th of 1977. The Enterprise was released from the back of the 747, flew for 5 minutes and 21 seconds before landing at the dry lake bed at Edwards. This is just outside the orbiter hangar where they're bringing it back in. And let's see here, one more here. This is of an Atlas 2AS launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base. I just thought I'd throw in a launch other than the Space Shuttle for you there. And let's see, we have one more here of space flight. Oh, no. Okay, then we go to the micro part of it. This is March 22nd. We found a hummingbird nest in our yard. I actually was in our patio looking around, trying to clean things up, and I found a hair sticking out of a branch, and I pulled on it to throw it away and found out it was connected to this nest. And a few days later, we had our first hummingbird chicks born. So we got to follow these beautiful little creatures all the way through their life cycle until they finally left. So I'm going to just sort of let this play out a little bit here. You can see the birds crying for their food from mama. There she is sitting on the nest and giving them some nice warmth. We were very worried about the nest and the birds surviving because during this time we had some really cold and rainy weather. But mama kept them safe and warm and fed, and it was pretty amazing to watch them. Here they are getting older, starting to get the pin feathers in, always asking for food. And there they are, you can see the eyes open finally. Proud mama there. And the pin feathers are changing into real feathers as we speak here. Getting longer and longer, the coloration finally coming in. And they're really starting to show their inquisitiveness, and they would watch us. Now, I want you to look at this nest for a moment and understand that the interior of this nest is 1¼ inches in diameter. That's how small this is. So these birds are just amazing. They are absolutely tiny, and it was really great that they accepted me into their life, and they saw me from the moment they opened their eyes out there with this big camera pointing out them all the time. And it was, yeah, we definitely bonded with them. And so even once they finally left the nest here, which you'll see coming up, this is just a few days before they left. You can see how mature they're getting. Mama's starting to feed them. Mama is also starting to leave them more and more, starting to get them to understand that they are going to have to go out on their own. And I love this one where Mama's looking up at me. You can see that red crest there. And now we're just a couple of days away from them finally taking flight. And there we are testing the wings out for the very first time. You can see how the feathers are really smoothed out. And on to the next one. There we go. And here we are, just like, this is the day before they were leaving. And they were just begging their mama to come feed them, but Mama's staying far away at this point because this is how she entices them to come out of their nest. And so they were just begging for their food. And we were just really like, oh God, if we could only feed them ourselves. You can see the one has now left the nest, is standing on a branch. He soon left, and soon afterwards, the second one also left. But the nice thing is that they are so comfortable here that they've come back to visit us all the time. So this is several days after they left the nest. She comes back in. This specific bird came in and hopped down on a branch and kept hopping closer and closer until she hopped off the branch about 2 feet away from me and came over and hovered right in front of my face for about 20 seconds, just staring at me. And it was just amazing. I wish I had my camera for that, but I was just too amazed to do anything but stand there and watch as she hovered in front of me. So it's great that they know that they have a safe place to go. Here they are picking little insects out of the air and finally flexing their wings again. And there's the empty nest. And we're going to keep it safe for them. And just one last astronomical photo. This is actually from last night. This was a 30-second exposure of the International Space Station going over our condo last night. And so I just thought I'd leave you with that. And that's pretty much what we've got there. I hope you've enjoyed the photography, and sorry for the glitches at the beginning. And there we go. So thank you very much for listening to my little story of the macro and the micro of flight. Hopefully those birds will come back and join us again when they decide to have their own babies, and we can go through and watch another life cycle take place. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Ken, for having me. And I look forward to the rest of the presentation.
That's fantastic, Michelle. Thank you. Yay. Nice.
My wife, Cherie, I have my own cheering section. So thank you.
Okay, Ken, I think next is Kurt Closell, but has Kurt shown up?
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
it's the-
there's Kurt.
Wow.
Okay. Great. Kurt Closell is going to play guitar and sing. And be safe, I guess. Okay, over to you, Kurt.
We're living in a new reality these days, right? Here's a saying: mask it or casket. This song, the verses are written by Thomas Merton, who was a Trappist monk during World War II. And then I added the chorus into it. So the verses are actually very, there's despair. And the chorus is an intent to give hope. So I'm assuming, Dan, that I have audio and video and everything's working? Is that
Good.
Is that a yes or a no? Are you there, Dan?
We can hear you very well.
Okay.
Very good.
Also,
Yeah,
this
we all hear you good.
Since this song has a lot of words in it. I'm actually going to bother to paste the words. Let's see if I can chat. I'm going to paste the words in the chat. Okay. Well, now we live in the time of no room, which is the time of the end. It's a time when everyone is concerned with the lack of time and the lack of space, with saving time, conquering space, projecting into time and space the anguish produced within us by the technological furies of size, volume, quantity, speed, price, power, and acceleration. The primordial blessing to increase and multiply has suddenly become a hemorrhage of terror. We are numbered in the billions and massed together. Martial number, marched here and there. Tax drill armed, work to the point of insensibility. Dazed by information, drugged by entertainment, submitted with everything, nauseated with the human race and with ourselves. Nauseated with life itself. Well, as the end approaches, there is no room for nature. Oh, the city's crowded off of the face of the earth. Ooh, why? But I don't know. Yeah, you got to have a little soul. Oh. But then I look around, look what I have found. I can tell my Lord's a listening God. All this hate and draw, can I get us far? Why continue we to sin again? God loves you. And I do too. Well, when you find this out, you all will love all too. Went out into this world, this demented inn, in which there's absolutely no room for him at all. The Christ Buddha wanders in. But because he's out of place here and he has no room here, and yet he must be in it. He is mysteriously present in all those for whom there seems nothing but the world at its worst, for then there's no escape even in imagination. They cannot identify with the power structure or crat of humanity which seeks to project itself outward and anywhere into a centrifugal flight into the void. To get out of there where there's no weight, no self, no God, no identity. Nothing but the bright, self-directed, perfectly obedient and infinitely expensive machine. A manna from above, peace and honor, love. I can tell my Lord's a listening God. All the Satan war, can I get his call? Why continue we to sin again? God loves you. And I do too. Well, when you find this out, you will love too. Oh. And for those who are stubborn enough, there remains its last apocalyptic myth of machinery propagating its own kind into the estological wilderness of space. Meanwhile, on Earth, the bombs make more room. Manna from above, peace and honor, love. I can tell my Lord's a listening God. All the Satan war, can I get a spark? Why continue we to sin again? God loves you. Thank you very much.
That was neat. I have never seen anybody play guitar wearing gloves, let alone a hazmat suit. That was really neat. Is that
New reality.
Is that an open G tuning you're playing?
That's an open E tuning.
Open E. Okay, cool. All right, thank you much. Thank you very much. Let's see. Oh, okay. Something I've been waiting for. Next up is Bob Zubrin. And for those of you who don't know the name, but you all do, he's very well known as a guy who's been advocating for human return or human travel to Mars. He wishes that we were already where it was a return, but Bob has been pushing Mars for a very long time. And he has some poetry for us. Over to you, Bob.
Okay. Thanks for inviting me. Okay, the poem I'm going to do has an obvious connection to aviation because it's about a bird. And it's a very original poem, although, or rather it was when it was written about 180 years ago. So some people may have heard it, but it's a lot of fun and I like to do it. So here goes, all right? Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, rapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I sought to borrow from my books, for example, this one, surcease from sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, only this and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, said I, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, for the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came tapping, that I scarcely sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and the echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Only this, and nothing more. Back into my chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Still I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, I said, that is something at my window lattice. Let me see what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a saintly raven of the statement days of yore. Not a minute stopped her stating, not a minute's obeisance made him, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling all my fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of a countenance it wore, though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. But we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon a sculptured bust of Pallas above his chamber door, with such name as nevermore. Okay. But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if with that one word his whole soul he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and busted and door. Deep into that velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy after fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. But the bird, still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, I did that already. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. That and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, on whose violet velvet lining that the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press on nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed by some unseen scenter, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God had sent thee, from his angels he had lent thee, respite, respite nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget the lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempter sent or tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home of horror haunted, tell me truly I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within some distant maiden it shall clasp a sainted raven, a maiden, who the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, still it's sitting. On the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, in his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
That's fantastic, Bob. It should have gone into show business. That was out of this world. That was great. I had no idea. It's been a long time since you and Mitchell Clapp and myself sat on the boat in Marina Del Rey. Remember that?
Yeah, that was something. Those are the days, good times.
Pioneer rocket plane. Oh, wait. Does that ring a bell?
Yep, sure does. Pioneer rocket plane.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was just fantastic. All right. Now the next act. I guess, is not here. Ken, is that the case?
Kenny is not here yet.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a shame because he was going to sing Space Odyssey, and I quite deliberately put it right after Bob, just because I thought that. I just thought it would be an amusing segue, and I threatened to sing it myself when I found out that Kenny wasn't coming, but I think we'll just move on to the next one. So next is Aldo Spadani, who is going to show us aerospace art. There he is. So over to you, Aldo.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my studio. You can see some examples of my artwork behind me. I'm mostly a digital artist, but not too long ago, I completed this oil painting, first oil painting I'd done in about 45 years. So I figured, you might as well exercise your skills at least once every half century, just to make sure you remember how to do it. So aerospace art, there's a lot to it. So let me go ahead and share screen, and I'll show you some examples. Okay, aerospace art. The usual question I get is, how long have I been doing this? And pretty much my whole life. I remember watching John Glenn go into orbit way back in 1962, and I taught myself how to draw and then later to paint, and I've been doing it ever since. Here you can see some examples of drawings and paintings I did in elementary school and high school. My art career got diverted a bit when I graduated from college. I decided to become an aerospace engineer. So I worked for a bunch of great companies. I worked on a lot of cool programs. About halfway through my career, I figured out a way to combine my interests and passion for engineering and art, and I created a group at Northrop Grumman called the Engineering Visualization Resource, the EVR. So my team and I created literally thousands of illustrations like this, as well as animations. And we basically visually told the story of the company's cool future products and processes. Now, my own specialty kind of became the ability to envision complex concepts of operation, or ConOps. Though I'll take a quick flashback at this point. Here's a drawing I did way back when I was about 12. The human beings fighting the Martian war machines. Here's another good old space battle. Pew, pew, pew. So I envisioned a Space Force way back when. Now here's one I did for the Navy much more recently. So as you can see, I've been doing the exact same drawings for like half a century. But now I get paid to do them, and this taught me a lesson. If you see a child, a kid, your own child perhaps, or grandchild, doodling cool little airplanes and spaceships in their notebooks, don't necessarily discourage them. This skill has served me well in my career. Okay, in parallel to my engineering career, I formed an aerospace a company I called Aerospace Imagineering right around 1991. I'd love to tell you this was a vast global enterprise, but it's just me. Yeah, I'm the CEO, chief engineer, and the bartender and the sanitation engineer, and everything in between. But I use this company as a vehicle to pursue, independent consulting and mostly work in the entertainment industry. So here's some examples of the kind of conceptual sketches and finished artwork that I create. And over the years, I managed to get work on about a dozen different movies as a technical consultant, and some of them even as a concept designer. I've worked on films like Apollo 13, Iron Man 1 and 2. I even got to work with Will Smith personally on writing some script. Here's the movie I'm currently working on. It's called Persephone. It's kind of an interstellar adventure survival tale. I'm working with the gentleman you see on the left side here, Geoffrey Morris. He's the writer, director, producer, very talented guy. He's got quite a team of advisors already. I was shooting for the title of Space Ranger, like Buzz Lightyear, but they're calling me the spacecraft technical advisor, and that's okay. I kind of like the sound of that. Now, Geoffrey's actually a very talented designer, so he's designing all the stuff in the movie, but he and his team will send me rough 3D models of what they want to come up with. Like, for instance, we just finished this general purpose satellite concept. So when I see the rough model, I'll come up with sketches like you see on the bottom of the screen to try to give the hardware a little bit more technical realism. So it's a lot of fun to work in this capacity. Then his designers will then incorporate it, and what you see here is the final satellite for the film. So hopefully this movie will come out sometime in 2021, so look out for it. Now, science fiction is not just about media, movies and TV. I mean, there's also literature, books, reading a book, what a concept. So I've been privileged to work with some of the great science fiction writers, folks like Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. I help them translate all the fantastic, wonderful stuff they describe in their books. So here's some sketches and finished artwork I created for Larry and Jerry, and we lost Jerry not too long ago, so may he rest in peace. Get to work on video games as well. So on this game, I was challenged to come up with what would a well-dressed, intelligent, spacefaring dolphin look like. So here's one of my concepts for that. Now, over the years, while I was working as an engineer, I was mostly a behind-the-scenes kind of guy, but slowly my artwork kind of creeped out into the public world. I managed to get a bunch of magazine covers, including a few covers on Aviation Week. More recently, my artwork's been featured in a bunch of books. Here's a batch of what my current artwork looks like. Available now on fineartamerica.com. Let's take a look at a few of these more closely. The Saturn, now usually I focus on more advanced futuristic concepts that I develop or develop with other folks, but I've been doing a lot of Apollo stuff recently because we're in the period of the 50th anniversary of all the Apollo missions. So, why not? So the Saturn V you see on the left side, I actually licensed that to Estes Industries, the company that makes model rockets. They're using it on the packaging of this illustration for their 1/200 Saturn V kit you see there. Sometimes I get to work with scientists. The illustration you see in the middle I call Cradle of Life. I worked with the scientists and astronomers of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. I got to spend a week with them, and this is what I created for them. A lot of fun. Here's my most recent Apollo work. Needless to say, I love rockets, and if you love rockets, you gotta love the Saturn V. So here I tried to capture the power and the energy of the staging event. And I was very happy that the very first person who bought one of my high-end prints, and you see her down in the lower left there, is Dion Stafford, and she is the daughter of the Apollo 10 mission commander, Tom Stafford. So as an artist, you can't beat having your artwork owned by, the core family of the space program. So very cool. And the name of this piece is Get Ready for a Little Jolt, Fellas. Bam! Okay, and this is my tribe. I'm a member of a group called the IAAA, the International Association of Astronomical Artists. And we've been collaborating more and more with the AIAA, and we're having a lot of fun just disentangling the acronyms. But this group incorporates many of the world's and the former and current best space artists. And it's just a fantastic group to be a member of, quite inspiring to work and be friends with all my colleagues. Now, no entertainment event would be complete without a little bit of shameless self-promotion. So right now, also sponsored by the AIAA, we have an ongoing virtual aerospace art gallery. Most of you have probably seen the notices for this. I encourage you to visit. My artwork is featured along with my good pals and colleagues, Michelle Rausch and Mark Pistana. And the three of us have done a number of AIAA events along the lines of STEM and other things. And we're always wondering, there's got to be other aerospace artists out there who are AIAA members. So if you're out there, we want you. We'd love you to have you guys join us. So contact me, please, and let me know who you are and show me your stuff, and maybe we could collaborate. And lastly, I created this poster for an upcoming event. It should be a lot of fun. I invite everyone to join my colleagues, Rick Sternbach and Rod Pyle, where we call ourselves the Three Spaceketeers. And on May 30th, we're going to talk about spacecraft and science fiction. So please join us. Well, that's what I've got. Thank you, and on with the show. Back to you, Dan.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very neat. I think I've seen some of those before. Didn't know it was you. Now I know who did it.
Ah, cool.
The next act we have here is the only one that I required to audition. I got an email, and it just sounded like, well, it might be great or it might not be. So young Max here is 10 years old, and he is actually quite expert with CAD rendering, as you can see from the models in front of him. So he actually did an audition with me, and at the end of that, I thought, oh, the rest of you guys, you got to see this. This is great. So Max, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Raymer. So I'm Max, and I'm going to be modeling a plane, Raymer's ATF concept, Rockwell ATF concept in Fusion 360. I'm just going to share my screen here. Is everyone seeing this, or?
Yeah, we're seeing it. And let me tell everybody, I did not tell him to do my design. He chose it himself, but I'm honored. Talk to them, Max. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them how you're doing it.
So right now I'm going to create a cylinder as the body of the aircraft. So I'm going to do about that much. And then I'm going to increase the number of faces on the aircraft. Next, I'm going to select the circumference of the end of the cylinder. So I'm going around selecting. Then I'm going to use the Modify Form tool and make the nose really small and pull it out to about where it looks like on the blueprints. And then I'm going to zoom in and fill the small hole that remains, like that. And now I'm going to start, the nose is complete, and I'm going to start working on the cockpit. So I'm going to select faces that are on the cockpit in the blueprints. So all of these, and then I'm going to pull them out. And when it gets here, I'm going to unselect, and then keep pulling, and unselect. And finally, last one, over here. As you can see, the design is not perfect, so I can fix this by going to the top and selecting this line over, these two lines over here, and using the Modify tool to put them into place. As you can see, still over here, there's still problems, so I can fix that up by selecting and pulling up here and over here as well. And then you have the cockpit of the aircraft. Next, I'm going to start working on the wings. To do that, I'm going to select a line all the way over the aircraft. I'm going to start on one side and then do the other. So I'm selecting through. And then I'm going to pull them out. And then unselect. and then pull out. So I'm going to keep repeating this process until about the next one. And I'm going to unselect, but I'm also going to unselect from the other side, like this. Unselect. Select. So as you can see, the wing is now coming along. And then now that this one side of the wing is done, I'm going to start to work on the other side. I'm selecting all the way through, just like that. And I'm repeating the same process I used on the other side. So I'm going through and unselecting, just like that. And I'm selecting again. When I get to about here, I'm going to unselect from the other side. And over here, unselect. And unselect from the other side again. And I keep repeating the process till I'm all the way to the bottom. So more. And there. This time I'm also gonna pull it back a little just to get more of that shape. So I'm gonna do that to the other side. And through here. And I'm also gonna pull up. And just fixing it up. And finally pulling back to get the right shape. So I'm gonna do that to the other side. And then you have the completed wings. Next, I'm going to work on by the little more the end of the jet by pulling out more here. So I'm also going to pull out to about where it is on the blueprints, to about over here. And then I'm going to fill the hole at the back of the aircraft, just like that. And next, I'm going to work on the air. Well, first I'm going to create a construction plane, which will help me create a sketch where the intakes are actually located. So I'm going to create a sketch on that new plane I just created and start to get to it. So I'm going to create, as you can see, the blueprints are not perfect. So some problems with them, but I'm just making sure they're good, right? That's fine. And now I'm going to do the same process to the other side. Just making sure I have it aligned like it is. And I'm just, this blue line is helping me align it so I get it right. And then I'm going to do this side over here. I'm just aligning it again. And there you have the two intakes. Next, I'm going to extrude this using the Create Extrude. So I'm going to select these two sketches and pull them out over here, and then increase the number of faces. It's not making too many, but to about that much. And I'm also going to fill the holes that remain. So I'm doing one, so that looks better. And then I'm going to do the other, just like that. And now I'm going to fix up the what's left behind here by pulling a little, just like this, like that. Finally, I'm going to get to work on pushing the back of the aircraft down, just like this. To about that much, where it is on the blueprints. Finally, I'm going to fill the holes at the back of the aircraft. So over here and over here. And the last thing to do is to build the tail fins. To do that, I'm going to create a construction plane, and I'm going to align it to about over there, over here. And then I'm going to create a sketch on that plane I just created. So I'm going over here, and I'm just copying what the design looked like. And then I'm going to use the fillet tool to make the edges a little less sharp. Like that. And then I'm going to finish this sketch. But I'm also going to use the move tool to make the tail fins slanted like they are in the real aircraft blueprints. So I'm just selecting all the objects, and then I'm going to the back view, and I'm going to move them just like that, and then I'm going to extrude them like this, just like that, and then I'm going to fill the holes on both sides, like that, and like that. And then I'm going to copy that object, and I'm going to move it to the other side, where it's about similar, and then I'm going to move it just into place, just like that. So good. And there you have it, the Rockwell ATF. Obviously, this is not a final design. Has a lot of improvements, but here are some of a version of an F-16. This one took me about 2 or 3 hours to make, and this is a final design. And here it is 3D printed. The estimate did not include it. So that, and that's it.
Fantastic, Max. That's just wonderful, Max. That was very interesting and entertaining, and you obviously have a great future ahead of you. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, let's see. And do we have the Casey Monninghoff with the Native American flute? Did he show up?
Yeah, he said he cannot make it.
Okay,
He just sent it like 20 minutes ago.
Okay, well then we'll jump right to Jeff Michelle.
Jeff.
Oh, no, no.
Unmuted him.
Hi, Ken, are you ready to go?
Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second.
Seems to be logged in twice. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I did, yeah. I could actually share my screen. I've got my family watching on one monitor and I'm on the other one.
Okay, almost there.
So I want to say it's a real honor being part of this show. And Max, when it comes time for you to seek employment, I hope you'll consider Raytheon. All right, thank you very much, Ken. And what I'll do is I'll just say slide when we want to go to the next one. So let's go ahead to slide. So I'm a lifelong amateur photographer, decidedly amateur, I have to say. Really got started in the late 50s, early 60s with my grandmother's Brownie camera. Lately, though, I've been using a Nikon D750 and an iPhone XS. I've been pretty active in the Institute over the years. I'm a fellow, former section chair for the section sponsoring this event. I've been chaired twice, Region 6 director, etc. Married to Dana Puchel, who's sitting here with me in our home office in Solvang, which is up in Santa Barbara County. Normally, I'm down in Hermosa working at Raytheon, but I've been up here since mid-March, working from here very effectively. My day job is at Raytheon. I specialize in space systems engineering. But to be more precise, I really specialize in designing imagers that look at the Earth from space. And so in that sense, I might be a frustrated artist because I do the engineering that enables some magnificent frames, including the one on the next slide. So this is from Landsat 7. I have a plaque in my office commemorating our performance on building the Landsat 7 imager called ETM+. This frame won an award about a month ago as the NASA Earth Observatory Picture of the Decade in honor of Earth Day, the 50th Earth Day. And what you're looking at here is the bottom of the ocean, actually, at the place called the tongue of the ocean off the Bahamas. And you're seeing structures that are actually on the bottom. And this one beat out a photograph of a volcano taken by one of the astronauts. That was magnificent as well. Next one, please. Another system that I've worked on is something called VEERS, which is on an environmental satellite called JPSS. Actually, this was the very first VEERS flying on SUMI NPP. And this is first light, Amazon Delta, magnificent frame of the Earth, looking at the complexity of the delta, the river, the ocean, biological productivity, clouds, etc. Really was a great way to start the mission for this instrument, for which I was one of the chief engineers. Next slide, please. But of course, we don't have to leave the Earth to really experience the majesty of nature. And Dana and I have been to a few eclipses, including the Great American Eclipse of just a few years ago. And this is one of the photographs I took. Go ahead to the next slide, please, Ken. You can see some solar flares. Off to the left are some prominences that you really can't see very clearly. But this is a solar eclipse is just an awe-inspiring event. We saw this one from Idaho. And actually somebody that we were traveling with, we had to travel a short distance to actually get into the path of totality. Someone we were traveling with said, well, I don't know that it's really worth going to totality. It'll be like 99% from here, right? And I said, yeah, but you really want to see totality. It doesn't last long, but it's really magnificent. Next slide, please. Well, some of you might have wondered what I was showing you at the beginning and on the cover slide. And this is the uncovered photo. I took this while we were waiting for the Great American Eclipse to start. I'm looking at the sidewalk at the church camp, actually, where we ended up for this event. And the corona-like shapes you're seeing are actually shadows of the moon on the sun as we're approaching totality. I have to tell you, one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen, and unfortunately I didn't have my camera with me. When I lived in San Diego, I saw a partial eclipse of the sun from Point Loma, the seaside part of Point Loma. And it was partially cloudy, it was kind of foggy actually. And I actually saw the eclipse in 3 dimensions because of the way the shadow was projected through the fog. I would have loved capturing that, but it was actually before the days of cell phones, really. So next chart, please. Well, Dan and I have had the pleasure of traveling all over the world. And one of the places we went for our 40th wedding anniversary a few years ago was Uluru in the middle of the outback of Australia. A magnificent place, a sandstone geological formation. And at sunset, you get colors that actually look like this. This is not processed. You can see this rock with the sky above, green vegetation, absolutely breathtaking. Slide. Well, we've also been to South America many times, and we were just down there last year, went to San Pedro de Atacama. And one of the places we visited is known as the Valley of Mars. And you know, if it weren't for the footprints that you can see in the sand, it almost looks like some of the pictures we've seen of Mars from the landers and rovers on Mars. Really a magnificent, breathtakingly beautiful place. Well, of course, the reason we went to South America was for the eclipse that occurred down there last year. Next slide, please. And so this is one of the many photos I took of that eclipse. We had actually thought about going to the one that's going to occur this year in December, also in Chile. It can be viewed from Chile, but under the current world travel circumstances, I think we're going to miss that one, unfortunately. Well, speaking of magic, go on to the next slide, please, Ken. This is a shot a friend of mine took. I'm in the middle, right under the sun, with my rig, the tripod, the Nikon camera. Dan is standing to my left. And I don't think I've ever seen a photo that really captures the magic, the human magic of the eclipse experience in this one. Next slide, please. Well, speaking of magic, we've been to Africa as well on safari. And this is an unbelievable experience. You've never been on a safari like this. I couldn't recommend it more. If we get back to a world that was close to the normal we had before and things open up like this, I recommend it. Really the best place we went was Botswana, of all the different countries we went to. And this is in Botswana. We were there sort of toward the end, actually just after the rainy season ended. So there's plenty of water. And this really impressive group of elephants drinking from a small river. Next, please. The Okavango Delta is just absolutely magnificent, and there are landscapes like this that are routine down there. Next slide, please. I love sunsets, and you're going to see a few more sunsets here. This is just one of many magnificent sunsets we saw, in this case in the Okavango Delta. Next slide, please. Well, you really do get close to the animals on a safari. We saw many hippos. This was in the Delta as well. Next slide, please. And, but I have to say the elephants impressed me more than anything. And in case you think this elephant really isn't as close as it appears in the photograph, it really is that close. It was amazing how close we were to this and many other elephants. Next slide, please. And this is along the, I think along the same river in one of the pans of Botswana. We also went along the Zambezi River for several different things, but I think this was, it could have been along the Zambezi, but anyway, another group of elephants. Next slide, please. And you know, the whole experience was unbelievable. Some of the best parts of it, though, occurred when I couldn't get photographs. We saw a leopard in the dark, and it was just magnificent seeing it, but I really couldn't photograph it. Again, highly recommended. Well, next slide, please. Oh, yes. I can't leave Africa, this part of Africa, without showing a photo Dana took of me getting ready to ride the zip line. Now, I don't know if any of you have ridden zip lines. Most of them, you just go down and you end up on the other side and you get off. On this one, you actually go down and you end up across the river, the Zambezi River, just downstream from Victoria Falls. And the ride itself is exhilarating. I love speed, but waiting down at the bottom over the river with the falls and everything was a little bit uncomfortable. It took a while for the guy to come down and get me to pull me back up. But again, a highly recommended experience. Slide, please. Well, at the other end of Africa is Egypt and the pyramids, obviously, and another must-see. Dan and I were just there in 2019, about a year and a half ago, and just an unforgettable experience. I know people are concerned about their safety when they go to this part of the world. I've not had any problems at all in there, Israel, other places where you might worry about security. And it was fantastic. Slide, please. And this was in the Egyptian Museum. We went into all sorts of archaeological sites, seeing things that were not open to the public. And in some cases, we saw things that had just been discovered within the past week or so. So pretty amazing. Slide, please. Well, probably our favorite destination is Europe. This is actually in the UK in Westminster Abbey. I love stained glass art of so many types, just because of the purity of the colors and you know, being a physicist really by training, I really appreciate the physics that goes into creating these stained glasses. Next slide, please. Well, the main reason we love going to Europe is that's where our 4 grandchildren live. And this is my granddaughter, Jessica. This is at an American-style cafe in Germany where they live, and that's in Etzel with California plates, obviously. Next slide, please. I have 4 grandchildren, as I mentioned, but the 4th one was just added a few months ago. So that's Henry, Jessica in the middle, of course, and then Miranda in the back seat of the Etzel. Next slide, please. Well, you don't have to go halfway across the world to really experience the magnificence of nature and to get great photos of whatever you might happen to be seeing. And so here I am in the John Muir Wilderness in the Sierra. I decided to leave out the photograph that I took higher up at high altitude. In fact, I didn't remember taking it, was the weird part about it. But when I saw myself, I thought, yeah, I'm not going to show that one. But anyway, next slide, please. This is Mount Whitney, my favorite mountain on Earth. It's the highest peak in California, in the contiguous United States. Really a magnificent mountain. Thousands of people, I'm sure, climb it every year, and it's definitely worth visiting. Next slide, please. Well, and the weather can change very rapidly on Whitney, and this is another shot higher up on Whitney, looking through the clouds toward the beautiful white granite that is throughout the Sierra. Next. Well, even closer to home now, when I'm doing my normal routine, which is working during the week in El Segundo, living in Hermosa, I walk down to the pier, the Hermosa Pier, every chance I get. Typically with my cell phone camera, I try to be there for the sunset. And this is one of the many, probably literally hundreds of sunset scenes that I've photographed over the years. This one I called Glimmer because what you're looking at, of course, is the reflected setting sun along the crests of the waves. And there's actually a video that goes with this that shows the waves moving up and down. Raytheon just won an imager called Glimmer that's actually an ocean color imager. And it was the name was partially inspired by this type of event. Next chart, please. Well, this is one of the many sunset photos I've taken along the beach with the sun and the waves, etc. Next chart, please. This is one I took with an old Android cell phone camera that I had years ago. Amazing color. Some artifacts in this one, just, you know, because this really was an early camera from more than 15 years ago. Those of you who know Hermosa know that they've changed the lamps on the pier since I took this photograph. Next chart, please. Well, I really literally have taken thousands of photographs. And this one I really thought was a dud. Because I really didn't even intend to take it. I was taking the camera out of my pocket. And so this is really an accidental photograph. But then after I got home and looked at it, I thought, you know, this is actually pretty interesting. With the colors, of course, both of the ocean and the clouds and sky itself, but with the bird and the surfer and the boat, it's kind of an interesting collection of activities going on there. Slide, please. This is another one I took. I don't think it was the same day, but as I was walking back along the pier to the pier plaza, I saw this woman and young child running. Presumably it's a mother and daughter trying to catch up with the father. And I liked the reflection, of course, off the sand and the shadows. And so I took a photograph of it. But the impressionistic art that you see here is due to the iPhone itself. I don't know what kind of algorithms it runs exactly, but it has sort of an impressionistic quality that I like. And I have to give full credit to the Apple algorithm designers for whatever artistry might be in this one. Next slide, please. Well, we have some magnificent sunsets up here in Solvang as well. And this is one I just took within the past couple of weeks. Next slide, please. We have a rose garden dedicated to the memory of my mother in the front of our house in Solvang. And I took this shot actually Mother's Day weekend, which is really pretty close to the peak of one of our rose blooms here. Slide, please. Yet another view of our rose garden on a beautiful day with roses in full bloom. But we had an unexpected experience last weekend, Mother's Day weekend. Dana was coming home from the grocery store, and she noticed a doe entering our property. We see deer around here all the time, and they live along the creek. There's a herd of them along the creek, but it's rare to see one by themselves. And we thought it was sort of interesting that this one was entering our corral. Well, the next day, next slide, please. We were treated to the doe plus 2 fawns that had been born in the wee hours of last Saturday. And they were very wobbly, and it was really a lot of fun to watch them in our corral. Understandably, the doe was very concerned about us, and the fawns were just having a great time. They stayed with us through the wee hours of Monday, I guess. We knew they wouldn't stay with us for very long, and by the time they were able to run, they moved on. So it was really, for us, a very special experience. Next slide. Well, regardless of what you're doing, what you do every day, or in our current interesting circumstances, enjoy the ride and don't forget your camera. So thank you very much.
Hey, that was really neat. Good picture.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So at this point then, we do have a special guest star, and I'm delighted that Olivia Rocks is here with us, and she's going to do 2 songs, and they're both rather appropriate. One of them is a song called Galileo. And who else writes pop songs about Galileo? So she did, and so she's going to do that one. And then she's just written a song, I haven't heard it yet, called Shooting Star, so I'm eager to hear it also. So without further ado, Olivia, take it away.
Hi, everybody. So great to be here, and this was such an amazing event. I've been watching, and just so much talent in one space on a Zoom call. It's kind of unbelievable that we can do these types of things over Zoom and, you know, see each other, even though we're not in person and everything. But I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy as you can, and as sane as you can during this time. I know it's very hard. But I'm gonna do a couple songs for you actually. So this first one I'm gonna do is called Galileo, and this is one that I wrote. This is on my album Pop Rocks, which I have conveniently here to show you. This is my new album Pop Rocks, and this is track number 2. So this is a song I literally did write about Galileo Galilei. I was very inspired when I was first learning about him. I think I was about 14 years old. When I was, once you learn about him a little bit when you're younger, but when it left an indelible impression on me was when I was about 14. And I wrote this song then because, he was a man who spoke his mind, who just went against everything and was truly just a groundbreaking person. And so this song kind of helped me to inspire myself as a songwriter, as a musician, to follow my dreams and keep going, even though some people may or may not like the kind of music I was doing at the time. And it was something that, it kept me going on. So this is dedicated to all of you guys, because I think all of you are kind of, in some sense, like Galileo, right? Because you guys are going for your dreams and you're doing things that are totally out of the normal, and you're engineers, so you're literally coming up with these designs. And I was watching some of those amazing sketches, and even just the photography. You guys, you have something unique. And so this is kind of dedicated to all of you. This is my original song, Galileo. Maybe I'm the one who's going crazy. Seems like everyone
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm probably wondering why I'm here, by the way, and I want to give a huge thank you to Dan. I'm still going to do one more song for you, but I want to just give a big thank you to Dan because I actually know Dan from his daughter, Emma, and we met, oh my gosh, I think I was 11 years old, and we were in a gymnastics class together, and we just hit it off instantly. We're talking about music, talking about the Beatles, actually, and I couldn't even believe that there was an 11-year-old that loved the Beatles as much as I did. And then fast forward, 6 months or something, I meet Dan and he starts playing me Beatles songs and I go, there you go. That's why an 11-year-old loves the Beatles so much, because Dan has inspired her. So he's been such a big supporter of me though my whole career since I was 11. So thank you so much, Dan, for having me on the show. This is so much fun.
And to unmute, you are so welcome and thank you for showing up. Now let's hear that new song, Shooting Star. Yeah.
Song that is from my album, out to the masses, I guess, to radio this summer. And actually that last tune that I just played you was on the radio, which is crazy to think that my songs are being played on the radio now. And it reached number 54 on the pop charts. So that was really cool. So we're hoping that this next song does well. And this is a song I wrote called Shooting Star. So this is a tune, obviously, Shooting Star, it's all about going for your dreams. Obviously, there's not really shooting stars there. But I think this is the song that just says, go for your dreams. And also I figured, hey, you know what? I'm kind of speaking to a bunch of engineers and think Shooting Star is a good choice there, and Galileo. So kind of my two nerdy songs, I guess, which nerds are awesome and I love it, and you guys are amazing.
Show me your shirt.
Oh yeah, I forgot to show you guys. Okay, you're gonna laugh when you see my shirt. But let's see. So think like a proton, stay positive. Take this off while I'm here. So here we go. This is Shooting Star. You can't stop me. I'm a shooting star. Don't try and slow me down. You won't get far. Shooting through the sky, no one can touch me here. It's like the stars will be the one who cares. Every word I say will make a wish come true. If I can dream it, then you'll see me try. It's not a person in the world to make me stop doing what I love to do. Even if you try and get me done, you know that it won't stop me now, cause I already know just who I am. And even if the sky's falling down, you know I'll always stand my ground, cause nothing's gonna ever get me down. You can't stop me, I'm a shooting star. Don't try and slow me down, you won't get far. The walk from here is so surreal, it's like a dream, no it can't be real. I don't wanna pinch myself to wake me up. I remember when I thought about this place, I was born, surely had no grace. This is just what I thought it ought to be. Even if you try and get me done, you know that it won't stop me now, cause I already know just who I am. And even if the sky's falling down, you know I'll always stand my ground, cause nothing's gonna ever get me down. You can't stop me, I'm a shooting star. Don't try and slow me down, you won't get far. Soaring high above the
Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia. Fantastic. Wow, wow, wow.
This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. Okay, and with that, I'm going to steal the screen back and say goodbye. So thank you, thank you.
Oh, and you can catch me on social media, Olivia Rocks.
Right, you can. In fact, here she is. So down there at the bottom is where you can find her on the internet and also on Facebook. And I would like to really thank everybody for participating today, and all the acts that participated. It was a strange and unusual thing to try to do. Try to get together and have a little fun and maybe make our lockdown a little less boring. And I think we succeeded in that. So again, one more time, thank you all very much. And the audience, you're very welcome. You're encouraged to vote and give us your choices for the best, except I'm ineligible because I organized it, and Olivia is ineligible because she's just too darn good. So we'll, let's see, where's the...
So Dan, I'd like to thank you for being the MC of the whole show.
Oh, you're very welcome. So right there is the email. Oh, thank you.
Well done, Dan.
So I think it was a lot of fun. Okay, everybody. So at that, we'll call it a night. So good night, everybody, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody.